Hello, hello. All right, let me get this. Ugh. Okay, so hopefully you guys are doing really well tonight. I missed you guys yesterday. So today, it's series day 2 on reading. I'm excited for this series. I'm going to bring you a lot of good information, okay? And research-based information. That's the key thing, right? Research-based information is the way to go. So, tonight we're going to actually talk about research that was done by the California State University in Sacramento, California. And it has a lot of information in it that I just found so interesting. And I think you guys are going to be enlightened by this. I encourage you to share this. And I encourage you to share this with other parents who have children that are possibly nonverbal, who have selective mutism, and have trouble reading, and children who are really struggling to read at all. And they don't just have to be nonverbal to participate in this type of reading program and strategy and methodologies. But I have a personal story myself of my child is now in Linda Bell because of reading difficulties and many years of that. That's awesome. And it's super important. I've done many of his trainings. He lives about an hour and 15 minutes from me, Aaron. He's great. Very old-fashioned, but he's great. But yeah, welcome, Dana. How are you? All right. So it's really important to understand that all children learn how to read differently, okay? And there's no telling how one child's going to learn to read and then another child learn that same way, all right? So it's a lot of trial and error, and that's where we seem to run into a lot of difficulty, all right? Because we're not seeing that, okay, this isn't working. Okay, we need to change it right away, right? So before I get started, my name is Raven Woods. I'm the CEO and founder of Autism Mama Rocks, the IEP, and I help parents gain the knowledge and the confidence to become the CEO of their IEP meeting. If I seem tired, I am, okay? It's been crazy busy, and I had an amazing IEP, though, today. It was awesome, and I love it. I love it. This is a school team based out of Iowa. All right. So like I said, I've worked in 41 states now. Gosh, Aaron, you remember it was what? Just 2 months ago or something? I was at 39, right? But this parent, grandparent actually, has struggled with this school system for years. And they didn't really budge. There's a lot of issues. They actually put her child in like a room with just walls and a door, and just different things that went on. But we really got some good evaluations put in place. We scheduled the next meeting to go over the evaluations. We amended certain things in the IEP, like as needed. And hey, Jess. And we really honed in on what that child needed. It was nice. I mean, I just kind of collaborated with some of the teachers. They were really great. And the psychologist. It was really nice working with a school system that was open to suggestion. Not that I know everything, because I always defer to them. And I say, you're the expert in OT. You tell me this is what I would suggest in occupational therapy and the evaluations for this child, just with my knowledge of what evaluations are out there, what they do, etc. And, like auditory processing, there's the TAPS, and then there's other ones, So you need to make sure that you're very familiar with the evaluations. And I took my notes in the IEP, and I'll tell you what the evaluations are before I get started on reading today, what this child's getting, okay? So we agreed on the KTEA, which is the Kaufman evaluation, and really look at the cognitive area of the student. And I love that because you really want to get a good look at where that child is, All right. So I really like to hone in on whatever psychoeducational evaluation that you get. All right. See, I always get off topic. I'm going to get into the reading, I promise. But I love psychoeducationals that really focus on the cognitive ability. I like the IQ. I like the visual memory, the executive functioning, the attention, all of that. You got the WISC, you got the Wyatt, you have all of those, and you have the WISC 5 now, the Wyatt 3, all right? And then the KTEA. And, you know, what's really important is not so much just the name of the assessment, but you want to know what it does, all right? The other thing I really like to hone in on is if the child, we're going to be talking about this, right, in reading, because if they are nonverbal, okay, you have to know the type of evaluations that you want to do, and they're not going to always be the same, okay? If you are just joining, post a 1 below if it's your first through third time catching me live. Post a 2 below if you're an oldie but goodie. But make sure you say hello. Make sure you make yourself at home. And I know it's a little bit awkward sometimes here on the page, so head on over to the group at Autism Mama Rocks IEP group. Just stick that in the search bar, and the group's amazing, okay? So, hey, Erin, how are you? You're an OT. That's awesome. Yeah, the OT really worked with me today. You know what we agreed on today? You probably know about this, Erin, is we agreed on the test for handwriting skills because that's the one area that this student needed. You know, he didn't need all the other assessments and that sort of thing. He just specifically, we were kind of collaborating on, and I'm sure, Erin, as an OT, you know, we were looking at the daily living type skill of, okay, he's got to learn how to type, right, and learn that kind of aspect, but yet he still, at the end of the day, has to learn how to write a check and it be legible, you know? So we honed in on that, right? So I love that, and I loved that the service providers and the teachers really, really worked with me today. It is very nerve-wracking for me, even though I am good at what I do. I get the kids what they need, but it's not always fun fighting, you know? I mean, I get tired of fighting, and sometimes I just want a break and them to just do what's needed for this child and for the children out there. And, you know, I wish it didn't have to be such a fight. And what school systems need to be open to, and more the district end, is the child doesn't, we want to focus on the child's needs, right? But if we don't know those needs, we have to, assess, right? And figure out what those needs may be. So it can't be, okay, you can have this assessment because that's where your needs are. Because what if they need something else? Like, you know, one of the things we talked about is auditory processing. We actually don't know if this child has auditory processing issues. It's unlikely, but we don't know. And so since we don't know, I requested to test for it. Why not? At least check it off the list that it's not an issue, that it's not one of those things that has to be addressed. But since nobody knows, we have to at least try, right? And figure it out. So we also agreed on top of the Kaufman, which I really like, okay, we agreed on curriculum-based assessments. Do you guys know what that is? So you hear me all the time saying, do not just take objective, you know, subjective data, you know, what they say, what they observe, right? Well, when you combine that with a norm reference test, which is the Kaufman, and then you take a curriculum-based assessment, which is the assessor, psychologist in this case, sitting down with the student and working on different things, various things, to see where the deficits are. Here's the brilliance in this, okay? Take notes on this, guys, because this is so brilliant. When you do a norm-based assessment combined with a curriculum-based assessment, you get everything you want. And I'll tell you why. Because in a norm-based assessment, that's norm meaning all peers and so forth, how they average in total to those peers, you're going to get those low, average, significantly low, right? So what does that tell you? It doesn't tell you where they're low precisely. It just tells you, okay, working memory is low, or, you know, visual memory is very low. Receptive language is average, you know? So average, who wants to be average? So like, where are they, you know? And so that's where the curriculum-based assessment comes in. So you get your norm-based assessment, then you have your curriculum-based assessment, and guess where she's going to focus? All those areas that were low, below average, low, significantly low, and then you're going to find out exactly where that child is. You're going to really be able to hone in on what it is that they're low on, not just the title, okay? So it's super. And then we agreed on speech. We are going to do the GFTA 3, which I love that assessment. GFTA 3. And then the CASEL 2. That one's okay, but because she agreed on the GFTA 3, I said, okay, do whatever you want. And then the child's going to have assistive technology. So we really came together on this. I was really, really pleased. When I said, hey, you have ESY checked as no, I need you to uncheck that. All right. I said, I don't care if you don't check anything. Don't check yes, don't check no, but you're not allowed to just check no. All right. You cannot just check no for ESY unless you've discussed it in your annual or closer to the spring, April, May, and you've evaluated that child to see if they actually need ESY. You can't prejudge. You can't, at the annual that may be in September, say that following summer that child doesn't need ESY. We can't do that. We don't know. So no IEPs should have ESY check no. So they have an option. There's certain children that it's always checked yes because they always need it. There's children where I've seen their IEPs check no, but they possibly may need it. So why would you check no when you don't know? So I think there should be a box, since they seem to want to put our children in a box, and that's what these IEPs are. Oh, we don't have that in the drop-down menu. Oh, that's not in our box. We discussed that today. And I said, well, from what I know, our children are individuals. They're not boxes. And we're not going to put them in a box. So we actually thought outside the box, and that's what I loved about this IEP. So I just wanted to tell you guys about that win, because it was a breath of fresh air to have a team that really wanted to collaborate with me versus just fight because they didn't want to budge, you know? And what happened at the end of the day is this child's going to get the assessments that he needs, and then we're going to get together in 60 days and evaluate how that looks now. What did they see? You know, and then we're going to be able to really create an awesome IEP. So I'm just really thrilled about it. So I wanted to share that with you. All right. So let's talk. Okay. Post a 1 below if you are new. Post a 2 below if you're an oldie but goodie. Let's get going. Nonverbal students. Okay. So, and I'm going to read some of this because this is research-based. This isn't my stuff. Okay. This is amazing research that I found on nonverbal students, because I love researching about reading, and I found some really good stuff here. And you guys, if you have children that are nonverbal, having trouble to read, even if they are a little bit verbal, this could work for them. If something's not working, why not try something new? See if it works, give it a good, 60 to 90 days, and then try something new if it doesn't work. But you always got to keep playing with it. And I don't mean playing with it in like 6 months, because forever is going to go by, and what's going to happen? Nothing's going to happen, and you're going to kind of be really mad that all this time went by and nothing happened. So I always say, 60 to 90 days, you're going to know something. It's kind of like when you start working out, they say you're going to see results in like 6 weeks. Well, I always say like 60 to 90 days, you're going to see something. Are they making any type of progress? And so if it's working, stick with it. If it's not working, then you got to change it up. And that's where a lot of school systems really need to change their train of thought of, okay, we need to assess and we need to look at situations by that, in that time point, in the 60 or 90 days versus an annual IEP. I wish I had the control to change annual IEPs. I don't think it should be annual, because I think when people are given that much amount of time. Now, I do think goals should be, all right? But I think that if we address things more often, we'd be able to find when that child is not making progress on something and being able to tweak them. And instead of my IEPs being 3 hours, they would be shorter, because we would be addressing things in increments and small. And sometimes that's better, than getting, having a 3-hour IEP, which is my norm. Okay. 3 hours is actually pushing it for me. Yes, very true. Very true. I do like Wilson though, but that's very, very, very true. All right. So Here we go. You ready? So share this if you know anybody who has a child that can't read and is really struggling or just can't speak at all, okay? Because this is what is going to be good for them. I really think this is awesome. All right, so reading interventions for nonverbal students. So basically it's saying here that limited research on reading interventions for nonverbal students is kind of prevalent, right? And it's not known by many because I've approached school systems and they're like, well, we don't know what to do. This isn't the right, I've asked for like a KTEA and stuff like that. And they're like, well, that doesn't work because this child can't talk. Well, if you knew how to properly teach them, they'd be able to take that assessment because they would be properly taught. And there's a certain way to do that, and this is great. All right, so current approaches to teaching nonverbal students to read are overly broad and limited. It goes on to say that nonverbal students need to be provided with an effective intervention that specifically addresses their unique needs, go figure, and helps them acquire literacy skills. Okay, so that's just kind of your introduction. All right, so now it talks about combined approach. I picked and choose what was really important for you guys, so I don't talk to you guys like I did on Monday for like an hour and a half. Okay, so combined approach to reading instruction. A meta-analysis completed by the National Reading Panel showed that phonemic awareness instruction was significantly better than other forms of training in helping children acquire phonemic awareness and enabling children to apply this skill in reading and spelling. Okay, and there's research based on that. I'm just giving you kind of an overview. So let's move on. Phonemic awareness instruction. So knowledge of letter sounds, correspondent, and phonological awareness skills are the basic building blocks of literacy learning. The National Institute for Literacy suggests that effective phonemic awareness teaches children to manipulate sound. Okay, that's super important, by the way. Spoken and spoken language. This includes building skills in phonemic isolation, recognizing individual sounds in words, phonemic identity, recognizing same sound in different words. You guys probably have heard of that. Phoneme categorization, recognizing the word in a set that is odd one out. So that's kind of confusing. So let me repeat that. So phoneme categorization, which is recognizing the word in a set that is the odd one out. Does that make sense? All right, so phoneme segregation, which is breaking words into separate sounds. Phoneme deletion, which is recognizing the word that remains when a letter is removed, okay? And then phoneme addition, which is recognizing words when a phoneme is added. All right, so I'm giving you kind of the overview. I'm going to get to the stuff that's you really want to hear. So phoneme substitution, kind of a given, was recognizing the word that is made when a phoneme is substituted for a new one, which is things we all have to do when we read. And that's from the National Institute for Literacy. So phonemic awareness is proven and proven to be effective and an effective strategy for typical teaching learners to read through helping them understand how words come together. All right. So systematic phonic instruction. Let's talk about that for a second. So systematic and explicit phonics instruction makes a more significant impact to children's growth in reading than does non-systemic or phonics instruction. And again, that's from the National Institute for Literacy, okay? Systemic instruction is critical and a critical component of effectively teaching children to read because it is the direct teaching of letter sound, all right? And basically relationships in a specific sentence that helps with decoding ability. All right, so non-systemic phonemic and phonics instruction can also be a useful tool, just so you know. So let's talk about best practices in interventions for reading. All right, so the best practices in school psychology, and according to all this research, I'm not going to talk about that. The guy who did this research, okay, basically is stating that implementing interventions for students, all right, in order to read and having reading problems should occur with scientific process of targeting students' needs, selecting and applying evidence supported. Okay, so that's kind of interesting because the instruction that matches that need and evaluating whether or not students improve their performance at sufficient rates as function of instruction. All right, so the best practices, the author proposes that the 3-tiered RTI that I'm going to talk about model should be used to determine the level of intensity and intervention added. So when I come out and I say, okay, this child needs reading intervention, all right, that's kind of a broad word, right? But I always say it. I say it a lot. This child needs reading intervention. He's really struggling. She's really struggling. This has been going on for years, and now we're talking about 5 years behind a student that I'm actually getting ready to go to mediation with in regards to their reading skills, and they're not comprehending. So why is it that no one did anything in 5 years? Why? And this is a verbal student, okay? So the biggest thing is trying different things with the kids, all right? If they can't read, whether they're verbal or nonverbal, all kids can learn to read, all right? Even if it's just a little bit at a time. So it's always about finding what is working for them and what will work for them. And again, that can range. All right, so you guys ready to hit on this? All right, so here's one thing I want to address. I gotta always address the negative. So problems with typical interventions. All right, so that's not what I'm going to talk about. That's actually just typical. Research-based interventions designed to respond to reading problems do not address and are not designed to respond to individual differences in learning. What did I just say? All children learn to read differently. All right, that is one reason why I don't like group reading instruction, because that's not saying that it's bad. That's not saying that they're not going to learn. I'm just not a fan of certain academic areas being grouped. And I think that there is much to say about that. So if you agree, post agree. If you don't agree, post disagree. And I'd love to hear what you have to say. I think everybody has a different opinion with it. I think that it's positive group instruction because, you know, children need to communicate. I don't think it's always positive because we don't know where those other children are. And again, like it said, problems with typical reading interventions is that's the number one thing. Research-based reading interventions are not designed to deal with children's different ways of learning, okay? So if that's the case, and that's the biggest problem is the individual differences in learning, then how is it that we can put children together in a group when they all learn different ways? That's where I struggle a little bit. I'm curious what you guys have to say. You said wait to fail doesn't work. Wait to fail. I don't think I said anything about wait to fail. What I said, are you talking about the student I was just talking about who is 5 years behind? What I was saying is, why wait 5 years to address what's going on? Why wait that long? Like, what happened? You know? So, moving on. So basically what it's saying in regards to children learning differently is that they acquire adequate reading skills from anywhere from 2 to 6% of children. And that's how many that may not respond to certain interventions. Okay. So anywhere from 2 to 6% of children do not respond. All right. So let's get into the good stuff. All right. Does anybody have any questions about some of the history of reading and the data in regards to what works, why things don't work? I know I kind of went over that fast. So if you have questions, post them below. All right. But I really want to get into what we're really going to talk about tonight. Okay. But I did want to give you an overview. All right. So nonverbal approach to reading. All right. So what we're specifically talking about today is reading interventions for children who are nonverbal. Okay. So basically what this is saying is nonverbal reading approach is a reading strategy that teaches students with severe speech and physical impairments to sound out words using internal speech. Okay? It's genius. The nonverbal reading approach allows accessibility to any curriculum through modifying the communication demands from the student. This method of instruction allows for teachers to analyze reading progress through nonverbal expression. I think this is great, guys. I'm such a nerd, right? Okay, so it's likely that the nonverbal reading approach is successful because it acknowledges that communication and expression can occur in a variety of ways. This is so genius. By adjusting the requirements of how to monitor progress, nonverbal children, they are provided more accessibility to curriculum. All right? So basically it goes on and says, furthermore, since this approach uses a typical method of reading instruction, decoding, and because decoding is essential, okay, aspect of learning to read fluently, it provides an effective means in which to train nonverbal students to decode using an alternative response to oral sounding out of letter sounds and words. How great is that? All right, so here's some areas that you want to focus on. All right, I have all my notes here. Anybody have questions at all? All right, so typically we have different types of children that are nonverbal, okay? A lot of children have nonverbal autism. We have selective mutism. And so we have just different ways districts get stuck on. Yeah, all right. You said, agreed, as a parent, how do we get the district school to comply? Oh gosh, that's another story. And then we have selective mutism, and we have other different disabilities that children can have that's going to affect their speech. All right. So number one, all right. So combined approach to reading instruction is the way to go. All right, with this. Phonemic awareness instruction, it goes over that in detail. We addressed that, and we really want to focus now in what you want to look at for your child, okay? So, the first one, the nonverbal approach, all right, is a reading strategy that teaches students with severe speech and physical impairments to sound out words, all right? So far, so good. Keeping up with you tonight. Good. I am glad. All right, so the first one, computer-based nonverbal reading approach, okay? So computer-based instruction using the nonverbal reading approach is highly effective and also gives students the opportunity to learn how to read independently. This suggests that using nonverbal reading approach as a foundation to be used with other learning methods like computer-based learning can be highly effective and an effective tool for children with reading concerns and are nonverbal. So wait to fail in Texas. Oh, that's what you were talking about. I was like, I didn't wait for anybody to fail. What are you talking about? All right, I got you. Okay. Scholars only advance in. Okay. Huh. Interesting. All right. Did everybody post a 1 below? Who did that? Tell me. I'm going to pull this up real quick so I can go over it with you. Reading tiered intervention. Huh. That is interesting. How does that work, Dana? Wait to fail. Well, I'll wait on you, so let's move forward. So the visual approach, all right? So visual learning is the recommended style of learning for children who have autism, all right? That's why Skylar, being in Linda Mood Bell, my daughter, Linda Mood Bell does a program called Visualizing and Verbalizing. And it's amazing. All right? I'm just going to be very honest with you guys. She started out there when she first tested, and I know, I mean, it makes me want to cry when I talk about it. She scored kindergarten, first grade level. Yeah, and she's 15. And the highest she scored was a 2.2. So what that is 2.2 is second grade, second month. Okay, so most of her stuff was like first grade, fifth month, first grade, third month. She had a K2, which was kindergarten, second month. And when I saw that, I didn't really know what to think, to be quite honest. I was really upset, and it was kind of eye-opener when I had gotten this IEE, because as a parent, you feel like you fail your child when those kind of things happen, right? So, but I'm happy to say I had a review with them yesterday, all right? And this isn't forever ago, guys, all right? I had a review with them yesterday, and she is now pushing a fifth grade level. And she has been there less than a year. And it's eye-opening. It blows my mind that these kind of things happen, but yet, you can be told, oh, your child can't learn, or, she's not going to get any further, and all these different things that I've heard, and it's not true. So it goes to show, don't just believe the things that we're kind of brainwashed in what we've heard. Try something new. Try something different, because it's all about the approach and the how. And I truly stand by that, not just as an educator, but as a parent, okay, who has seen it, and an advocate that has seen it over and over and over again with children, where you're like, ready to lose your mind. They're not really progressing. You're not really sure what route to go. And it doesn't matter what area they're struggling. It doesn't. It's all about the approach. Keep fighting. Fight for what it is that they do need. Figure it out. Ask for help. Whatever it is that you need to do, there is another way. It's just figuring out what that way is. All right? So visual learning is the recommended style of learning for children who have autism. So if they are nonverbal and have autism, this is the best way for them, which is the visual approach, which I can attest to, okay? Because my daughter is doing that visualizing, verbalizing. Linda Mood Bell would be able to charge as much as they do if they didn't work. They definitely couldn't. I think they're like here, they're all over the United States, but, I think the most are in California. There's a crap ton in California. They are based out of California, Aaron. And here, I know probably in like Newport Beach area, where their headquarters are, they're super crazy expensive. But that you have, Scott. She's at Linda Mood Bell, Rachel, and she's doing the visualizing, verbalizing. And basically, it's where they are taught how to create pictures in their head. All right. So, and how she does, I don't freaking know. I mean, it's so weird and amazing at the same time, because I see her brain working, like I see her processing it. And, kind of like if you ask her a question, sometimes it's not right away an answer. But then, in like 5-10 seconds, when she does answer you, it's this full sentence, right? So it takes her a minute to just process it for a second. But she is now painting pictures. She tells me, she comes home every day and says, Mom, I painted pictures today. And at first when she did that, you're going to laugh. But at first when she did that, I'm thinking, oh my God, what is she going there for? She's painting pictures? That's not what she's at Linda Mood Bell for. No, they teach them to do it in their head. How they do it, no idea. They're genius. But, and she has great people, it really works. It's phenomenal. But it isn't the only program, guys. All right. So visual learning is the recommended style of learning for children who have autism. The idea is to teach the students strengths. Spoken word is always presented with a visual kinesthetic element. All right. So the methodology that Braun, who wrote this, adapted from Olwen's research. It's Olwen, I think it is, Oelwin. I-E-N. All right. His research uses spoken words paired with simultaneous picture or written word. So I think that's really interesting on how you replace one with another, but still the same outcome occurs. I think that's really interesting. So I want you guys to really focus in on what is going to work for your child. All right. So you have, all right, the computer-based learning. All right. That actually does work. Okay. If a child cannot speak, there's got to be another way, right? So you have the computer-based nonverbal reading approach. Look this up. Okay. I can maybe post it too. So computer-based nonverbal reading approach. All right, look that up, do some digging with it, and then approach your schools with a plan of action. Then you have the visual approach, okay? And that is obviously what that is, and you want to look it up, and you want to do some research on it, and you want to really go into more depth than what I'm just telling you. All right, you want to really look into the visual approach, and even it talks about the nonverbal reading approach, which is the combination of. And that's how a child typically will learn best, when you combine different approaches and methodologies and not just stick to one thing, because not all one thing works for all of us. All right, so sometimes we need a combination of 2 or 3 to figure out what's going to work, or if we need all of that together to have different aspects of ways to learn. And then that can work. You know, it's all about figuring out what's going to work. The how. All right. I always say it's about the how. It's not who always, it's about the how. So people can say, oh, that's a bad teacher. It doesn't mean she's a bad teacher or he's a bad teacher. That's not the case. It's about how that person is teaching each individual child. Okay? So don't focus on that person can't teach my child or this person isn't doing their job. Don't focus on that negativity. Focus more on what is it that they're doing that's not working. All right? And that doesn't make them a bad teacher. Do you not think that I taught certain things that certain children didn't get? That's why I think out of the box. I actually love thinking out of the box. It's just my thing, though. All right? And sometimes people are kind of set in their ways and they don't really deviate. All right? So I like thinking out of the box. I like challenges. So if I had a child and they weren't learning something, I always thought about what I needed to do to make sure that they did. All right? Because I loved the challenge. I was fine with that. But sometimes it's not who that person is who's teaching to think outside the box like that. All right. So it's not a negative thing. It's just it's a how they're doing it. All right. Not a who. So you want to make sure that you ask questions. How many times have I said over and over and over, you know, ask questions from a question. Never, ever, ever talk with the school system in sentences. Ever. Okay. Sorry, teachers out there. Sorry. It always needs to be a question. What did Sarah do today? How did she learn to read? What did she read? Oh, she learned to read Cat in the Hat. How did she do? Did she decode? Did she sound out her words? You know, so you want to keep digging, and the more you dig, the more information you're going to find out. You know, that's my hunt and gather. All right. Hunt and gather, hunt and gather. So let me go over one more time with you guys. The visual approach is probably my favorite. All right. In the research that was done here, okay, in this paper, okay, it's like a 187-page paper. It's about teaching children with autism, all right, to read in a special education classroom. So in the methodology that had been used, all right, it was also teaching children with Down syndrome, all right, and the methodology uses mainly visual learning skills to teach literacy. All right, so when they kind of came together and they put their heads together, and this is the two who wrote it, which is Brown and Alwyn, all right, their research stated that phonemic awareness, auditory processing, and short-term memory skills are common areas of weakness of children with Down syndrome. Okay? So what they did was they populated that style of learning, all right? And then associate it with children and started testing them with autism, all right? And it was very much the same result, all right? So they taught this certain way and it showed how it was working, all right, with children with Down syndrome and showing where their weakness was. So then they decided to test it with children with autism. And it did the same thing. It showed, okay, this is where their weakness is. And so then what can you do? When you know the weakness, you can then build the strength. All right. So they were able to figure that out. All right. And then figure out what learning style was working and what can work to help them make progress. All right. So bottom line, when they started implementing the method of visual matching to teach literacy, this now started with children with autism, and that's where visual learning kind of came about, so they say, all right, and is now a recommended style of learning. And it is proven, all right? So it is proven. So they were doing the research. They did the trials. They did all of the, okay, here's this group, and then figuring out what the weaknesses are and what this style of learning, who it's going to help, and how it goes about, so how it's taught. All right, so they then said visual learning is a recommended style for children who have autism and are nonverbal. These approaches are also good for children who just have trouble reading, but also have like selective mutism and cannot communicate verbally at all, okay? So the idea here is to teach the students strengths, all right? So when you figure out the weaknesses, you know how to then build the strength, all right? So the methodology that they figured out was how their research used that spoken word and then changed that and said, okay, we don't have to have the spoken word. We can now have simultaneous pictures, all right, and or written word, all right? So the children did not know how to speak, so they had to learn how to read in another way, and they were able to do that in the visual approach, which I love this approach, guys. You guys got to look it up, all right? And then you have that computer-based approach, which is also amazing, okay? So when you have a child that can't read, but if they can read it and visualize it in their head on a computer or anywhere else, then teaching how to test a child who cannot verbally read is by comprehension. So there's many different ways in which to teach a child to read. Once they can read, the ways to test them are super simple. So you can test them through comprehension or many other ways, in decoding and how they are able to see something visually and, decode it, cut it in half. You can do that all with pictures. So it's pretty interesting how you can really take a situation where you feel like, oh, is my child ever going to read? And then you have this amazing way and ways to then teach them. And so what is the problem here? Where are we going to fall into a problem here? So we're working with different things that are proven now to work, and methodologies that have been tested and tried. But have you ever asked yourself why it's never come up? This is the first time, just 2 weeks ago, I found this article and research, and scholarly things that I nerdily like to read. But I didn't know that there was so much research and testing on different children who were nonverbal, not just all with autism. There were some just had selective mutism, some had Down syndrome, different needs. But they all, the majority of the kids, other than that 2 to 6%, learned to read, and they had no verbal skills at all. So 2 to 6% is nothing. So that's a pretty good number, you know? So minus just hypothetically 6%. That's how many children then learn to read and they can't even talk. Okay? So that computer-based nonverbal reading approach I like as well. It does work. And it was another area of testing, okay, different area, all right, and the research was a little bit different, all right, and hypothesized, but it still came down to how the nonverbal reading approach is effective, all right? So for those of you who have children who are nonverbal, okay, I don't care what their disability is, just nonverbal, or can not talk fluently, all right, or shoot, just has trouble reading, okay, look up the nonverbal reading approach, okay, then look up the different areas and different approaches that you can do, like the computer-based, like the visual, all right, there's different ways, and the ways that I'm talking about here may not be the way your child learns. It may be a different way, but it's all under the nonverbal reading approach. Okay, so look that up. Okay, know that it is scientifically based and researched. All right, it's peer reviewed, and you need to go fight for it. All right, so, and you don't be okay with no. If your child has trouble reading, they're 2 years behind or more, fight for them to have reading intervention. All right. Now, where there's kind of, you know, a struggle is who's going to be giving that intervention. I know, right? And that's a hard one because who is it that's qualified, the most qualified? Okay. Because what does IDEA say? The IDEA says highly qualified individual, and there's two ways to look at that. You know, you have teachers or OTs like Aaron. And so you have service providers who, what are they? They're licensed service providers. So what does that make them? Qualified, highly qualified, right? Then you have teachers who have their license and you have their certified and their certifications and whatever it is they have, or they just are a teacher. But here's the other way around it, is being a teacher, all right, does that make you highly qualified to do reading intervention? No. So you can be a teacher and highly qualified because you have a license to teach, but that doesn't make you a highly qualified educator in reading intervention, okay? It doesn't even mean a reading specialist is the most highly qualified to do reading intervention. A reading specialist is excellent, depending on their certifications. I don't know. Okay, everybody's different. But just a reading instructor, you know, a reading specialist that most schools call, it's a teacher with a master's degree, and they specialize in reading. So any ongoing certifications that's different, but just one with the master's, it does not qualify them to do reading intervention. Can they? Sure. Is it going to be done in the how? I don't know. So is it worth a try? Sure, for that 60 days. If it doesn't work, then you go back to the table. But here's the ticket. Start with who you think, sounds so bad, start with who you think they're going to go with, or who they are going to go. They're going to tell you who they're going to, okay, we can give them direct reading instruction with a reading specialist. We'll give it 60 days and say that and put it into the IEP. 60 days trial to see what happens in those 60 days. And you want to see hand-given data. Okay? Every day, data's taken. All right? And that's direct one-on-one instruction. Let's just say every day for an hour. The science of reading, if a child is severely behind, the science of reading actually says that a child should have direct reading instruction and intervention, depending on how far behind they are. They should have 90 minutes every single day. That's what the science of reading states. Okay? So if your child can't read, the science of reading states 90 minutes of reading every day. Okay? And that's true. I can tell you, in fact, Linda Mood Bell does that as well. They have a Linda Mood Bell Academy. So there's the instruction in reading and even instruction in math, and then there's their academy. Their academy is really interesting. It's 2 hours of reading every day, 1 hour of math, and then 1 hour, 1 month of science, and 1 hour, 1 month of social studies. So they rotate months. The other 2 hours in the day, if you choose to send your kid for the 6 hours versus 4 hours, is worked on the areas, those 2 hours is worked on the areas of where the child is struggling. So I find that approach genius. And so it goes back to show where the science of reading is backing that up. Okay? Linda Mood Bell just takes it above and beyond. So the science of reading, look it up, prove it to your schools, fight for your kids when it comes to reading. This is super important. I can't even tell you. I'm passionate about the reading and math because it's the core areas, guys. It's daily living. It's what, your child needs to function in everyday life. Do they need to know algebra and algebra 2 and all that stuff? No, I don't even know how to do that stuff anymore. But do they need to know basic math? Yes. Basic writing skills, written expression? Yes. Do they need to know how to read and comprehend and decode? Yes. Okay? So pick those important aspects, and especially if your child's really struggling, especially if they have reading difficulties, speech difficulties, and you're kind of feeling like, oh, I just hope my child gets here, all right, by the time they graduate. Don't think so much like that. Think more along the lines of not where you want to get them per se, as in, oh, I just want them to read at a 4th grade level. Look at it like this. What is it that you need to do, all right, in order for them to make progress? How does it need to be taught to them? That's going to be the tricky part, is figuring it out, playing with that puzzle piece. Keep trying to fit it in the right place, meaning change different ways and methodologies in which you're doing, okay? So, for example, if computer-based nonverbal reading approach doesn't work, then you can try it visual. Or what it says here is combine them together for the best bet, all right? So you really want to focus on how it's being taught, that it's being done consistently, that it's being done in an appropriate and adequate way for reading to be given and for the success and progress that you are wanting to see. It cannot just be done in 30 minutes. I mean, depending on your child's age, obviously, and depending on if they can sit. We do have to take that into consideration. But don't let that be an excuse, all right? Because we can teach that, all right? And you want to make sure that the time is appropriate for them, that they're not going to go crazy. But the science is there for a reason, the 90 minutes. And here is the thing. It doesn't have to be consecutive. You can do 45 minutes, 45 minutes. You don't have to do it in one lump sum. It's 90 minutes a day, not 90 minutes all in one. So that's where school systems have issues too, is we're supposed to be looking at the individual need, but if you hypothetically went to the school and said, my child needs 90 minutes of reading each day, the science of reading backs this up, there's science behind it, research behind it, all right, peer reviews, everything else, my child's 3, 4, 5 years behind, this is what is necessary, and you're willing to fight it through, then you need to come up with the plan yourself. What I mean by that is you want to have a plan of action. So if they say, well, what does that look like? You have your plan. You can say, well, my child is doing this, 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 and this during this time throughout the day. What I would propose is maybe instead of doing music, that's when you fill in some more reading. All right? Always keep PE, always keep those kind of active things. And that doesn't mean take away fun stuff in school. But if they're needing help in reading, you got to pick and choose what's going to be the best thing to take away. So when you look at it, write it down before you go into a meeting, all right? Write it down and say, okay, my child has math in the morning, and then it is reading time. So, okay, direct instruction for reading. So say for 45 minutes, and then they move on to something else. Say they go to PE, and then it's lunchtime. And then after lunchtime, it's language arts or something, or science. Then you can pick and choose there. And then, I always say social studies, use social studies time, because guess what? If they can't read, social studies is they're gonna learn this much anyway. So you need to make sure that you're picking and choosing where that day can be spread, how it's gonna be most effective, how they're gonna be in the LRE most of the time, if that's their ability and they're able to be in the gen ed setting. And if they're not, then they even have more time, all right, if they're strictly in the SPED setting. So you want to look at their day, formulate a plan. That doesn't mean you're not working as a team. That just means you're solving a problem before you go to the table, all right? So come up with different ways. If you know your team, what is it they're going to come back to you with of no? Why would they say no? Do they feel threatened? Are they scared about something? Yes, guys, they get scared about things. What is it that is causing them to say no? If you can solve that problem, you've gotten over a hurdle, okay? Solve problems. Be a problem solver, and then your problems will then be resolved, okay? That's not always the first time. It's not always the second time, but it is a very effective way in which to get your child what they need. Is paint the picture for them. Make it visual. Come in with a poster board full of plans, okay? Whatever it is that you need to do to show why this is going to work for your child, why it's going to be effective, and if it isn't, you have an alternative plan, which is, hey, then we can try this, or this, all right? So it's about, and then say to them, hey, let's all be open to this. Let's try it, all right? He's 3 years behind. I don't want him to get any more behind. I'm sure you don't want him to get any more behind. Let's do what we need to do to close that gap. Help them to understand, because they don't all work with your children every single day, all right? Some of them do, some of them don't. And if you can paint a picture, that's why I say when I teach my big course, I am teaching parents how to plan and prepare, present, persuade, and negotiate. If you know how to do that, you're going to be successful. All right? If you plan and prepare right, get it together, solve the problem. Okay? Then you have to present it in a way in which they understand. Okay? Just like our children. It's the how. If you do it in the right way, you're going to paint that picture. Now, that doesn't mean, guys, you're not going to run into those school systems that are just like, no, 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 no. Every school has their no person, okay? That is almost their job, to say no. But you have to look at it as a challenge. You can look at it however you want. The more positive, the better, all right? Because they may be taking it personal, but you don't take it personal, okay? You stick with what's the problem, what do I need to do to get my child what they need, and how do I need to paint that picture so well that they want to try it too, okay? So try to play with that. Play with it a little bit. You know your kids best, but look at that strategy, okay? Look at it as and I did this today in the IEP meeting. They were talking about something that I actually didn't even know what it was. Oh, it was the AT device. Not my thing, all right? I know the different programs. I don't know anything really about how they test a child for an AT device, like what they do, all right? So I know the types of children that need to be tested for it. I know the types of programs, but I don't know how the testing is delivered. So I said, can you show me what that means? Like, I don't understand what that means. Can you explain that to me? So I had them explain it to me today. They actually did a really good job explaining it to me. And then I said, okay, so paint that picture for me. Pretend that you are giving me this evaluation. Like, show me what that looks like. I really said that today. And so they did. You know, it was actually the occupational therapist and the assistive technology. Both of them kind of double teamed me and painted the picture. Once that picture was painted for me, it clicked. Oh, that's really cool. All right. And so then I said, well, what is it that the OT really helped me out a lot. I was like, well, what is it that the child needs to be able to be successful at using this AT device? Because we're talking about a child that can speak. So why does he need the device, et cetera, et cetera. So I learned something today too, where this child uses a program called ProWriter. All right. So Aaron, you may know about this. And ProWriter works on the writing part of it. Okay. So it's not the text to speak and different things in regards to the child can't speak, so they need the AT device to then speak. It wasn't like that. This was about the writing end of it. And I thought that was really neat. And how there's other programs that actually focus in on that. Like I had mentioned to them, typing.com. You guys can look it up. You can even buy it for your children yourselves. You don't have to have the school. And it's called typing.com. It's an excellent program for children because typing is part of our everyday world. You know, it is today's society, but that doesn't mean you don't want your child to learn how to write. I always say, if they can write a check and it's legible, cool, they're good to go. Then move on to technology. Then they're working on the words per minute, punctuation, all of that fun stuff. So that's it for today, guys. Hopefully you learned a lot. All right, look up reading instruction for nonverbal students and look up areas in which to teach them. All right, the biggest is the combined approach to reading instruction. All right, and the nonverbal reading approach. Okay, so nonverbal reading approach. All right, and then the combined approach to reading instruction. So, you know, it's about taking the nonverbal reading approach and then combining it to work for your child, the how. Okay, so hopefully that all made sense. We will be continuing this series. It's going to be quite a few of them. So maybe I'll throw some other things in there so that, you know, there's a wider variety of content, but reading, this is the reading series I've been talking about forever. So it's going to be lengthy, but I will throw other things in here and there. Okay. But I know so many of you have been waiting for this. So we're going to continue, with I'm going to give you the, reading instruction checklist the next time we talk. And we're going to move forward from that and talk about the checklist that you can have if you're homeschooling, if you are virtual learning, if you are in school. The checklist can work for all different children. They're just different, okay? And then we're going to move on to children with learning disabilities and reading. So, for example, dyslexia, praxia, so on and so forth. We're going to move into a ton of stuff, guys. I mean, I could go on, but we're gonna hit a lot of stuff, and we're gonna talk about domains and behavior. All right, and we're gonna talk about fine and gross motor skills and the correlation with reading there. So we're just gonna kind of continue this series, and I think that you're gonna find how, you know, things just come together, and then it's gonna give you some good knowledge to then go on your own and figure out what is going to work for your child and how you need to go about in approaching that and getting them what is needed and appropriate. Okay? So, if you want to know some tests in regards to reading, there's several, all right? But I'll give you two tonight, too, all right? So everybody knows I love the Self 5. all right? And then the next one is the C-top 2, all right? Both are excellent assessments, and both of them are in regards to reading. They both test different areas, and they're really good assessments specific to reading. All right. So when we were talking about the KTEA and the WISC and the WIAT and so forth, that was more psychoed. All right. So that's academics and other things, written expression, memory, and whole, IQ, cognitive ability. And then you have more specific tests, which I like even better, to where you're going to get a good idea of where your child is specifically in that area of academics versus a broad area of where they actually are. Okay? So I will see you guys later. Have a wonderful, wonderful evening. Hi, Cal. How are you? All right. And Jess, what is considered nonverbal in the education setting? They can't speak. And, you know, children have different abilities when it comes to speaking. But when you think of just nonverbal, it's, you know, nonverbal autism, selective mutism, that they can't speak. All right. But that does not mean that children who have speech deficits and difficulty, say your child's disability and their IEP is SLP, then that doesn't mean that they're not going to benefit from this. A typical child can benefit from this type of reading instruction. So that's why I say is there's so many different areas that can be worked on, and it's not always for a student that's nonverbal. This is actually very successful for children who are nonverbal, but it's not saying it's not going to work for a child that is. Okay? I love the structured literacy or Gillingham approach. Of course, Linda Mood Bell. And you just have to figure out what's going to be the best for your child. Okay? All right. So Dana, hey Susan, how are you? Hey Faye, how are you? Long time no talk. We have Jessica as a parent. How do we get the district to comply? I have 2 struggling to read. I don't know if I would say comply. Hi Lorena, how are you? Comply. That's a strong word. Paint the picture for them. Solve the problem. And go from there. If it's a fight, it's a fight. You know, you gotta, you know, if you're gonna do this, you know, and I'll kind of end here, guys. Look, I talked for an hour and 10 minutes now. It's super true. Super true. It is true. All right. That, and I take that approach too. If you're gonna do this and you're gonna advocate, start off with painting the picture. Be collaborative. Work with them. You know, try to do things in that way. If you see, don't fall for, okay, yeah, we'll give you this, we'll give you this. Get what your child needs. Don't just take 1 or 2. Get what your child needs. All right? This isn't a matter of, okay, I'll give you this, but not this. This is your child here. Get what your child needs. This isn't a negotiation process of, you know, your child needs all of this, but we'll give you 2. No, you're going to give it all to them because that's what they need. So if you're going to go into this with the attitude of, or mental outlook, how you think about it, whatever you want to say, you got to go into it thinking, I'm going to do whatever I got to do to make sure my child gets what's needed and appropriate. That's it. It can't be, I'll do it, but, you know, I don't want things to get really bad and I don't want to have, you know, this type of relationship. Well, none of us do, guys. None of us do. But are you going to go with that? Or are you going to go with, I'm going to do what I got to do so that my child gets what's needed and appropriate? I want to get along, but if it means that I'm not going to get along to get my child what's needed and appropriate, which one are you going to choose? And you have to know that answer. Okay? That doesn't make you bad or mean or evil or nasty or just not cool. Okay? It makes you a parent who wants to do what's best for their child. Okay? And when you're a parent and you want to do what's best for your child, you don't care about being friends. It's, yeah, I want to get along with you and I want to have respect and I want to have a relationship where we can really collaborate together and you take some of my thoughts and I take some of your thoughts and we really come together as a team. I wish that happened. I wish that happened all the time, like it did today for me, but it doesn't. So in knowing reality, okay, having the best thoughts you possibly can, giving people the benefit of the doubt and not taking like one thing to one school, you know, that you had an experience and then you went to another, even though it sucks that the next school has to be responsible. If you've approached it in a way where, hey, I want to get along, you know, but I'm still going to advocate, okay? But then you advocating and continuing to push because they're either not implementing or they're not implementing it with fidelity or whatever the case may be, you have to make a decision. And I say this all the time, and I'm okay with being the mean girl. Make a decision. Be the CEO, right? CEOs, what do? Right decision or wrong decision, they make decisions. Okay? And good CEOs, good decision makers, don't ponder on it. They make the decision. Okay? You have to push fear to the side, not let anything, okay, bog down your thoughts. Don't let emotion get involved, even though that's hard, I get it. And focus on the task at hand, which is what? Getting your child to read, getting your child to speak, getting your child to make progress, whatever it is. And you just need to look at it in a way of, I'm going to do whatever I have to do as a parent, grandparent, caregiver, to give my child the best opportunity to make progress. And I'm not going to stand for laziness. I'm not going to stand for excuses. I'm not going to stand for just give them time for a year plus. I'm not going to stand for gaslighting. I'm not going to stand for, no, we can't do that. No, we don't have that here in our district. We don't do things that way. And I'm going to make sure that what my child needs is provided to them. And you stick with that. And you run with it. Okay? That's it for today. You guys have a wonderful evening. Post a 1 below if you're catching the replay. Post a 2 below if you're an oldie but goodie. Make sure you guys say hi. And stick in that search bar, Autism Mama Rocks, the IEP group, and join the group. So again, Autism Mama Rocks IEP group. And make sure to share this, all right? Every month, I haven't done it for 2 months, so maybe I need to do 3 this month. Oh, shit. I give away Amazon cards. I give away all kinds of stuff at the end of the month. I put on my little, cowboy pink hat, and I pick names, and I give away stuff. Just because. And so if you share, then your name goes into the hat. Okay? So if you share, that's a thank you, but I want you to share with other people so that they can hopefully learn too, or if we just reach one person that helps their child, that's what this is all about. All right? Have a good night.